no one truly gives a fuck about you or your trading journey. A lot of you guys get into trading, and the first thing you do is tell friends and family about what you're doing and how you're doing it and how you found such a great source of income that is going to provide you with so much capital and so much amounts of money that you're going to be so wealthy from it. And I even fell into this trap myself where I would get into the habit of telling friends and family about constantly, like, of trading, of what I'm doing and like the plans that I had. And it just backfired on me all the time, right? Because it's very hard to convince someone of your vision, especially when you have no results to prove for it. When I used to tell my friends that like I would start trading, and in the beginning they would not necessarily be unsupportive of the idea. Of course, they'd be like, "Hey, bro, like that's it's great, that you're finding a skill that could be profitable for you and grant you money in the long term." But it was more in the fact where you get clowned for it in a way, right? Because when you're not making money from the skill that you talk about and you're trying to convince other people to get into, right? Because you actually care, but they don't have that same vision or that same goals that you have, it's very hard for the average person to see, okay, well, this is the amount of time it takes, and this is the amount of work that it's going to, require, right? When it's the same when you tell when I told my mom, I mean, my mom, thankfully, she's very supportive, but there's just the times where it would just be very difficult where I had to say, like, this is what I'm doing, right? And this is what it's going to be. I'm going to be on the computer a few hours a day, sometimes 6 to 8 hours at night. I'm going to be on the computer. I'm going to be, reviewing trades, trying to get better at the craft, because this is what it takes, right? You want to be one of the best traders. You want to be one of the best to do it. This is what I was willing to do. But other people don't see that vision, right? So that's what I mean is, when you're not profitable and you're getting started into this area, don't tell your friends. Do not tell your family. It doesn't make sense to do it. Why? Because you are not at the level to be explaining anything to anyone in that sort of sense. And that kind of ties into a bit of, being humble through the journey, right? Because even now, when you start to make money, you don't want to have an ego necessarily. You can have pride in yourself, right? Because you're willing to put in the work and that work will grant you the results. But don't have an ego to the point where it's like, I'm making this amount of money, I'm going to make this amount of money, because that is what kills 99% of traders, right? Is once they start making those claims and they start to tell other people. Because subconsciously, when you start telling other people, that puts a little block in the mental frame of your head where you're just like, okay, I told these people already, now I have to do it. And that saying to yourself will cause you to fuck up, because now you're going to rush, you're going to try to, do anything to speed up the process, right? Like when I used to tell people that, okay, this summer I'm going to have this car, I was just constantly blowing eval accounts, just trying to get a payout, because I thought, okay, well, I told this guy, I told this guy, I told this girl, I told, my uncle, I told whoever, I'm going to have this car in the summer. And what happened? I had 2 months to get there, but the first month I was doing well. The second month I felt like time was running out. I sped up the process. I sized up too much on my trading contracts, and now I have nothing to show for it, right? Because I didn't follow my process, my plan, and my mindset was fucked. Why? Because I went out, I talked, I did everything else except put my head down and work, do what's required of me to get those results that I wanted. And that's the main issue, is that your journey has to be self-reflection all throughout the way. You have to keep on reflecting off of yourself to see, where do I constantly make mistakes? How do I not repeat those mistakes, right? Because a lot of trading itself is based upon your psychology, right? A lot of people in trading, they make the same mistakes. Why? They're impatient. Why? Maybe outside of trading, they have the same issue where they have like anger issues, I was at one point like very impatient person where I couldn't wait for things, you know? And that possibly could have been a, you know, like childhood thing where I was very like anxious in a way, right? Because I needed things quick. I wanted to have things happen fast, right? So for everyone, they have their own set of issues they have to solve themselves mentally, right? Emotionally, and that comes with the journey itself. So when you're telling other people what you're going to do, what your plans are, be very mindful, right? Because subconsciously, you're going to be thinking, how can I prove this person right? Because if you're someone who's true to your word like I am, I'm very intuitive on making sure that, okay, whatever I said, it has to be done and it has to be done quick. So be very careful on telling anybody, whether it's your friend, whether it's your boys, anyone, whether it's your parents, whether it's your best friend. People change, okay? They're not always going to be, you know, okay, like cool, bro. They could really just backfire you when you don't want to go out with them one time. They're gonna keep talking about that shit that you brought up because of trading, right? And that could just fuck up with you mentally. So it's better when no one else knows about what you're doing in that sense. You can keep it brief, right? You can say you're doing something on the side. You don't have to go into detail. You don't have to go into the specifics. You don't have to go below that surface level where people, the average person, won't see beyond those limitations, right? Because you as a trader, you understand that this is a very difficult skill itself, and most people won't even understand what the fuck you're talking about, right? Most people will just be lost. So if you got any value from this video, leave a comment. I will respond. I'll look at all the comments and leave a like. Don't forget, turn on that notification bell. I'll be uploading every day from now on, staying consistent. And I hope you guys enjoy, man.